This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni, and here we go.
We're episode number 156 of the Practical Prayer Podcast, and you have teed up a topic for us to discuss today, which is about praying for others, which is on page, I think, 59 in the Practical Prayer for Real Results book. So was there something particular that brought this to mind, or were you just leafing through the book and said, oh, we should talk about this?
Well, no, I didn't leaf through the book like that. You know I'm not random.
True.
Yeah,
you're quite methodical. That's a good point.
Praying for others, request for others to pray. That I admit that's always been a thing for me, because number one, and this is going to get to what I really want to get to, but people can relate to this. There will be people that will come and ask you to pray for them. And I'm thinking, you could pray for yourself better than I can pray for you, because you intimately know what your needs are and everything that's in it. And I don't. And some of the dynamics you are probably not even going to tell me. And if I ask too much, then I feel like I'm prying. That's one thing. The other thing is there's the assumption in the church across the street, the traditional church, that prayers are only heard when a person is living right and, all of that business. So if I probably wouldn't ask someone to pray for me because I don't know how they're living. If that's the theology that I embrace, I don't know how they're living. So I'm not going to ask them to pray for me. That's number 2. Number 3, more on this side of the street in New Thought, the person doing the praying is the one that matters in terms of, quote, getting the prayer through, right? So it has to do with whether I believe what I am praying for you, right? Mm-hmm. I'm the one. That's a lot. To me,
I was going to say that's a lot. You've come up with 3 different, very important facets of praying for others, and lumped it all into the intro of this conversation.
Okay, so
it's going to take us another half an hour to unpack all this.
But it's out there, like it's right up front, and
it is.
In talking about praying for others, it has to do with your theology, and could be at least two very different interpretations of your theology. So there you go. That's it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. Thank you. And the first thing I'm going to say is, for somebody who is trained to do prayer, effective practical prayer on behalf of other people, it is a time and energy intensive process. It's not the sort of thing that we just do casually. So when somebody asks me for prayer, I'm going to spend some time at it, and I'm going to put some effort and attention into it. I'm not going to be doing anything else while I'm doing that. It's not a casual, just like do a quick one-off and throw it away. So that's one thing. When somebody asks a New Thought or Practical Prayer or religious science practitioner, pray for me, or a divine science practitioner, pray for me, there's going to be something involved in that. And you say, you don't want to be getting involved in what their business is, so you don't want to ask them too many questions. And I, on the one hand, understand that, but you do have to ask, or we do have to ask when we're praying for other people, because we would have to make a huge assumption based on the brevity of the story. My mom's in the hospital. Can you pray for her? I'm going to the dentist. Pray for me. I was like, all right, what exactly am I going to pray for? I'm going to the dentist. Do I want to get a clean, healthy checkup? Or is there actually a cavity that needs to be filled and I want the procedure to go smoothly and uneventfully? Is it all about having the insurance pay for whatever it is that's being done? And I don't really care what the procedure is. It's going to be a root canal, but I want insurance to pay for the root canal. What do you, if this came about exactly the way that you wanted, if your prayer were answered, if you said, pray for me, and your prayer were answered, what would happen? Yeah. You got to tell me that. You got to throw me that lifeline. Otherwise, I'm going to pray for what I want you to have. And, I might be watching the situation and there's mama in the hospital and she's been in and out of the hospital for a long time. And as far as I can tell, the next thing that's going to happen is there's going to be a memorial service for mama. And if you just say, pray for mama, I'm going to pray for the memorial service to unfold as love and harmony and goodness. And if you want mama to last forever, you better tell me.
Right.
Because otherwise I'm going to pray for what I see as highest and best. So we need to have clarity. And for somebody who's trained to do prayer for another person, it is malpractice for us to make the assumption that we know what they want to have us pray for.
Yes. And
so I'm going to pause there and let you.
Okay. So
it's your turn.
We'll never get through this whole thing. I can see that now. But okay, so let's just go with this. Okay, so what if my request, I'm the requestor asking you, right? What if in the discussion, my request is really unrealistic, perhaps unwise, or you can see behind the request, there's a little bit of stuff going on that, might be me. So, I'm laughing because this is a part of it. You want the whole picture like you described. Right? Yeah.
My enemies are bothering me. They're really annoying me. Can you pray for them to be smited? No.
No, but here's the thing. Okay.
No, I can't do that for you because that's not going to help you and it's not going to help me. And it probably isn't going to stop them.
And so why are they doing this?
The people who are asking for that prayer?
Yeah, because they say, well, why? Now that might be where they back off and don't want you to pray because they don't want you to know the details. But those are important, I'm thinking.
Yep. Yeah, those are definitely important. And if somebody wants me to pray for them, but they don't want me to know what the details are behind their prayer, then what are they hiding and who are they hiding it from?
Well, certainly
because
not.
If I'm...
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The first step in the prayer is we turn our attention away from the circumstances in the world and we turn our attention to that one infinite intelligence, that one divine presence, that one love, God, spirit, nature, the divine source, the Big Bang, whatever that coincidence is that's been unfolding since the beginning of time. That is the infinite creative power that we are turning our attention to. Now, the thought that my client or friend thinks that I am going to be able to put one over on the infinite and do a prayer on their behalf to use the infinite to solve their problem without the infinite knowing what their problem is pretty short-sighted. It's just not going to work.
I don't ever remember being I don't ever remember being taught that you need the whole story, right? I've always felt that. I've always felt like, because
story.
I don't need, I need enough to know something, right? Because nobody tells the whole thing. Now, if there's a hospitalization, a disease or something like that, that might be a little bit different. But there are those other kind of prayers that I'm not saying the person is not in trouble and their situation isn't, negative. I'm not saying that. But there has to be, you have to take all the evidence to court if we're going to be honest about the prayer, right? it's like, are you screwing around with this person and now they're after you? And then, or have you caused what part do you have in this situation? And it's not judgment, right? It's not judgment.
Yeah. Are you praying to get away with something? No, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Or okay, so let me go back so nobody thinks I'm talking about them, right? And, I've been around for a bit, so I've had several jobs. So let's say back in the early days of my corporate life, people were doing stuff. They were doing stuff. And they would ask me to pray and pray for the promotion, for them to get the promotion. And I'm thinking, okay, first of all, you're asking me to pray because I get that. You think I can move God. Fine. But I know your crap. I'm just saying.
Or in a situation like that where somebody says, I'm up for a promotion, pray for me. And and they might even say, pray for me to get the job. It's like, I can use that as a teaching moment, which I'm going to do with you in a second as we dive into that a little bit. Or I can just do a prayer for them, which is not going to be exactly the prayer that they were asking for. I'm not going to pray for somebody to get a job because they're up for the job and their ego tells them that would be a good job, because it might be a good job for them, or it might be a job that has a better title and a bigger salary and better perks, but that they will be so miserably unhappy with that it will not be worth whatever the goodies are that they're thinking about. I have also, in my career, a couple of times when I was in the radio, I got a job making a bigger annual salary than I'd ever made before. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the job only lasted 6 months. And if you take an annual salary and divide it by half, it's not nearly as big as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So I have seen people who have wanted a job and then gotten the job, and it's been awful. And I'm not going to pray somebody into one of those. And if it's their ego telling them that I should get this because I've been here this long and I deserve it and I've got the seniority and I know X, Y, or Z, that's a bunch of nonsense. There's a bigger picture. There is something much grander going on. So the prayer that I will do is for them to have their perfect job, for them to be to be generously compensated for the way that they're sharing their gifts and talents and skills with their employer, that the gift is exchanged in both directions and everybody is delighted with the circumstance, and it's a wonderful, peaceful, loving, uplifting, creative, engaging workplace. And when I say that's what I'm going to pray for, if that's what the job that they're talking about includes, then they're very likely to get it. And if the job that they want, it doesn't include any of that other stuff, they'll get a different job.
Well, I got to tell you, I did that exact, almost word for word prayer eons ago for somebody. And they said to me, that's not what I asked you to pray for. I asked you to pray for me to get this job. And I didn't have your book, so I didn't know. Mm-hmm. I was just trying to go for the best, the best possible outcome for everybody. And, in those days, it was God's will and all of that thrown in there. And they said, that's not what I asked for. So how involved, you know what? I guess I'm not asking from the practitioner's side, which I'm not, but from the prayer's perspective, the person asking for prayer needs to do some homework on the request. Yes?
They do not need to do some homework on the request. In the circumstances that you're talking about, if the person told me, I'm up for this job, I want you to pray for me, I would say, okay, I'll do it, but I wouldn't pray in front of them unless I had gone through the whole thing of, well, what happens if you get this job and it's awful?
Okay.
What happens if you get this job and you can't do it and they fire you in 6 months? What happens if you get this job and it turns out that your supervisor is such a jerk that you can't stand going to work anymore? Are you okay with that? Because I'll pray for you to get that job, but you have to be okay with all the possible downsides, or I can do this prayer for you to get this wonderful job. And if this is the one that's right for you, it's a love fest.
Okay. Okay. I think in the first scenario that you explained, that's kind of saying it doesn't necessarily have to work out. I don't know. That feels a little negative, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I'd let you pray for me on that one. I think I'd have to, because, I want everything to work out and be good. It's just that to me, it's a lot of thought. And I know that I'm sounding really hard on this, but when you want prayer for something, I just believe you got to do a little thinking about that. Both sides. Like you're praying for this wonderful wife that you've already identified, but have you gone through what I tell my girls? Here's a checklist. You got to have at least 10 things on the list, at least 10. Did you go through the checklist before you even want the person? You know what I mean? Just there's stuff on that list you need to check off before you even ask for prayer. So,
and that becomes awareness. And the way that I usually short circuit around this when I'm doing prayer for other people is they say, I want to get this job, and because it's got a big promotion, and it's going to be a raise in pay, and it's going to be better hours, and all the things that are good about the job. It's like, okay, I understand. That seems like a great job for you. Once you have that job, how will it feel? Mm-hmm. What will it feel like to you to have that job? Well, it'll be satisfying, and it'll be enjoyable, and it'll give me a feeling of prosperity, et cetera, et cetera. So, all right, then I'm going to pray for you to have your perfect job and to be experiencing all of those things. And if that's the right job, you got it nailed. And if another job shows up like in an hour that seems even better, you can take that one without getting in the way of my prayer. So let's take a break, and when we continue, we will talk some more about page 59 in the book and praying for others. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at BeTheLight.com. That's B-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at BeTheLight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you, and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni. You know what?
We're having a wonderful conversation about praying for others. Before we jump back into it, I'm going to mention that the people who do practical prayer on behalf of other people are called practitioners. And in order to be trained and qualified and supervised to be able to do that, it's a 2-year class. And that's in addition to some introductory training. I'm starting a practitioner class this fall, and we're actually going to be doing it hybrid, so it's going to be opened up to anybody who is willing to participate in a class, evening hours during the week, East Coast time, and the information about that is at the website at newthoughtphilly.org. So I'm just putting it out there for the people who are listening to the podcast who've been following this for a while. If you want to step in and learn how to do this for other people, that happens in year 2. And year 1, it's all about clearing up your consciousness, because when somebody comes to me for prayer and they say, I'm going to the dentist, pray for me, If I haven't cleared my consciousness out, if I have some energy about dentists and what should happen at the dentist, I'm going to pray for what I want to have happen at the dentist rather than what they want to have happen at the dentist. Or the same thing with our love life or with our health or with our prosperity or any of the rest of it. We need to get our own self out of the way so we can be present for somebody else. All right, that's the end of the plug.
Okay, so actually that's very good because that just introduces the next part of what I wanted to make sure we got to, and that is the huge responsibility that I see on both parts, both sides. Now, you talked about the responsibility in going through the practitioner program to qualify you to pray for other people. You have to have your own junk out of the way and whatever, and
or at least understand what it is.
But it's a responsibility. I think it's an honor to do it, but a responsibility before you can do it. To me, do you know what I'm saying? It's an honor.
I know exactly what you're saying.
So it's not something that you take lightly. I'll pray for you, but conversely, it is an equal responsibility to me. It feels on the part of the requester to understand what they are asking for. And I want to refer to your book. I don't know what page you have, but I'm pretty sure it's probably not about the second page, maybe. The paragraph begins with, prayer for others can be very powerful and highly effective. Our lives are created by beliefs. It can be much easier for another person to have a belief about your goal than for you to dig past old wounds and criticism and hidden beliefs to create a new belief about yourself. Before you even get to
it was have a belief about your good that you don't have for yourself. And have you ever listened to those voices in your head that criticize you? Those are 10 times meaner than even the meanest person outside in the world. Okay? Those little screaming voices inside telling us that we're not worth it, that we don't deserve it, that we'll never have it, all the rest of that. They're just mean, nasty, undermining little voices. And they're not really ours, but those are our doubt. And when somebody comes to me and their voices are screaming that they're never going to have any money, they're never going to be able to pay their bills, they're never going to be able to make ends meet, their family has always been impoverished, they're always going to be impoverished, what they really, really want is to experience some prosperity and some sufficiency and some enoughness. They've got a belief in poverty. Mm-hmm. They've got a belief in lack and limitation. And they can come to me and I can understand, oh, well, you've got a belief in lack and limitation, and there's no truth to it. That's something that they've learned. It's something they picked up along the way. So what I can do in dialogue with them is not necessarily get them to change the belief and understand that they're prosperous, but just to be willing to put down the disbelief for a little while. Okay, well, if somehow you were to have enough money to pay the mortgage at the first of the month and a little bit extra to save, and the car was working fine and the family was happy, would that be okay with you? And as soon as they get to yes, that would be okay with me. So, okay, let's leave that open as a possibility, and then I can go to work because their belief system isn't pushing back against me. Mm-hmm. And, get back to that first step in practical prayer. There's one mind, one presence, one love, one creative force that creates everything. And it is responding to conscious intent. So the experience in Carol's life could be created by Carol and her prayer and her belief and activating a new intention. Or it could be by Carol getting out of the way and leaving a clear field and me believing that about Carol, because we're impressing that intention into the same creative law. And the advantage is that I don't have your BS. I don't have your belief system. I don't believe in the limitations that you've learned through a lifetime. You got all that baggage? I'm not carrying your bags. I can set a new intention and claim something for you that you've never experienced before. And as long as you're not pushing back against it, the creative law that creates everything starts working on it.
Really significant what you just said. So therefore, you are the one who is actually believing. The mm-hmm. coast, all of it is clear on your end. It doesn't have to be on my end.
As long as you are not actively disbelieving it. As long as you're not going to, if I say, You know, Carol is prosperous, has plenty of money to pay the mortgage. And Carol's not saying, nah, it's never happened before, it can't possibly happen again. Because it's your belief. You are much closer to that experience than I am. And if I'm saying something, it's just blah, blah, blah into the universe if you're holding fast to the experiences and the consciousness of poverty or lack or unlovability or whatever the challenge is. Every time I go to the dentist, it's something awful. Pray for me. Like, you've already said your intention for it to be something awful. I might as well pray for that.
It's much beyond will you pray for me and me walk away feeling comfortable that you're going to handle it. You know, it's going to be because there's belief systems here that have to. It's a good thing that if they're on the same plane, but you don't always know that. I don't know. See, you're coming from a New Thought perspective where maybe people understand that. From the traditional church perspective, you ain't going through all that. You're just not.
Right. And that was actually the last point that you brought up, whatever it was, 3 or 4 hours ago when we started this episode, which is you got to be careful who's going to be praying for you because, you know, if they haven't been leading a righteous life, if they have not been doing good or deserving or whatever your description is going to be, then you don't want them praying for you because they're going to bring down the wrath or whatever. It's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So in New Thought, we approach that from a completely different perspective. And that's what a practitioner is. A practitioner is somebody who is not bringing their own agenda to the prayer. It's somebody who has been specifically trained. Here's how you clear yourself out of the way so that you can turn your attention to the infinite and claim something that is powerful and positive and life-affirming and uplifting for this other person without having any of that previous doubt or judgment creep into this. You know, somebody comes to you saying that, you know, what they really want is a happy romantic life. And you think, you're such a curmudgeon. Who would want to hang out with you? We don't necessarily get to let go of all the judgment, but by golly, we do learn to notice when we're feeling it. It's like, okay, well, what could this be? Okay, perhaps there is another curmudgeon looking for a relationship with a curmudgeon of like mind, and this is going to be a perfectly happy curmudgeonly couple together. I need to open myself up to the possibility that there could be love unfolding and recognize that if I've got some judgment about the person who's coming in front of me, I need to deal with that first. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I still say there's some work to be considered. And I guess because, you know, the majority, 50-50, but the majority of those that I talk to are on the other side of the street, you know, making a transition. And that's a tremendous, you know, that's a big thing. And I'm so totally honored to be a part of that because I feel really trusted, you know, with people's hearts and their hopes and that kind of thing. But it still feels like responsibility. It's not an easy transition because to me, and maybe because I come from a traditional church, even the way you described it, it sounds almost easy and smooth, but I'm hearing something different. I'm hearing that I better make sure that I'm considering how I believe, get myself out of the way. I don't just want to get married. I want to make sure, you know, case in point, long time ago, this is a group of women and people were talking about spouses and I said, suppose the person is right there in church, right there with you. No, I've looked around, ain't nothing happening in there. Okay, I said, okay, got you. I understand that. But suppose it's the guy who is like 5'5", bald, you know, and dentures, but will treat you like an absolute queen. How about that? Would that work? And, people were quiet as though that wasn't something that had been considered. That's what I mean when I say work. Like, you have to look at all the dynamics and not throw away something that might be really good because on the front end, it doesn't look so hot. Also, in the space of health, which is a much more sensitive, I almost want to say serious, but all the prayers are serious.
People think it's harder to get a result from a prayer for health.
Yeah, but I think what I'm finding is that it has a lot to do with what people believe about disease, sickness, how they got sick in the first place. Everybody that they know that ever had it never got well. That's a lot to get over. To say that there's a God out there, if you prefer, or the divine power doesn't have to read your script. DNA is a nice thing for us but the power of God, the power of infinite intelligence is not going to worry about what's in the DNA. It's just, plus it's not all, we don't see it all anyway, so.
Yeah, so I've got two points that I want to make, and then we're going to take another break. The first is that my sister-in-law's mom was diagnosed with cancer earlier in the year, and she was given 2 to 4 weeks to live, and it was expected that it was going to be very, very painful, and she'd be largely disabled. And we set the intention that love was unfolding, and this was evolving in a way that was highest and best with love and ease for her and everybody involved. And she actually was pain-free up until the last 24 hours and lived for 3 or 4 months and managed to go home and spend time with family and be involved in the activities that she wanted to be involved in before her passing. So you can look at that and say, oh, the prayer is a failure because she died. But that wasn't what the prayer was for. The prayer was not for her to live forever. She was like in her 90s. So we knew that there was an end time, and with the diagnosis she got, it was going to be 2 to 4 weeks. And so it wound up being a wonderful demonstration of the power of the prayer. The second point that I want to make is, in all the stories about the miraculous healings that Jesus did in the Bible, I don't believe there was a case where somebody came to Jesus for healing and Jesus did the prayer for the healing and they said, that's not the way you're supposed to do it. That's not the right prayer. It's like, no, this is the master. This is somebody who is using that infinite creative power to create something spectacular on our behalf, and it is not our business how he does it. Same thing is true when somebody else is doing prayer for us. Whatever it is that they're doing, they're holding our highest and best in their consciousness, and there's really no room for criticism about how they're going about it. And if we want to criticize them, then the criticism should be, I should have asked somebody else.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah, that's really good. Okay.
No, Jesus, that's not how I want you to pray. I want you to pray like this. No. Jesus is going to do what Jesus is going to do.
When people have asked me to pray, and it's been over the years, it's been, you can imagine any situation, it's been a request. And the only request I've ever kind of not really felt good about is when somebody is sick and they're praying that the person doesn't leave, because we're all going out of here. We are going. There's no question about it. So prayer doesn't fail because the person dies. It just doesn't, because everybody dies. And, there's this thing about people dying because they didn't live right, or because that's a whole nother podcast, but it's all tied up in stuff like that. You can't do that because everybody dies, young and old. It doesn't depend on, I think you may be able to help the cause if you're doing things that are against your health. extremely so, but
Oh, yeah, we can certainly mess it up and accelerate the process. But yeah, nobody gets out of here alive.
yeah.
My joke is that the underwriter's laboratory would never approve life on Earth because everybody gets killed eventually.
Right.
The place is a death trap.
Yeah.
And when somebody, when there's an illness and somebody comes to me because they're agitated because, Aunt Sally is in the hospital and it doesn't look like she's going to make it, and, do the prayer. The prayer is always, first of all, for the person who requested the prayer. And then in addition, it's for whatever it was that they were asking to pray about. And somebody comes to me and says, I'm going to the dentist, pray for me. I figure out what it is that they want to have at the dentist. And if somebody says, my husband's going to the dentist, pray for him, the first thing I do is I pray for them, for peace of mind, for knowing that everything is unfolding in perfection, for being in that place of love and presence. And then I do the prayer that everything at the dentist unfolds in sweet perfection. Let's take that break that I was promising, and we're going to wrap up with a completely generic prayer on behalf of everyone who is listening. And this is the one that works for everybody.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcione, and this conversation has been amazing.
An amazing and wide-ranging conversation about prayer for others. And we're going to wrap up with a prayer for others, and this is going to be the general prayer for others. And actually, you've been talking about the section in the book, in the paperback. It starts on page 59. On page 60, it kind of alludes to this prayer. And this is a prayer that we can do regardless of whether we know what somebody wants us to pray for or not. This is a prayer for highest and best unfolding with love and ease for the person requesting the prayer and all involved. And whatever highest and best unfolding with love and ease means to everybody involved in this, that's what the prayer is geared on creating. And it will work all the way up to the edge of each person's belief system, as good as they can believe it possibly gets, and maybe even a little tiny bit better. So it's working within the framework that we have and doesn't require that somebody else tell us what they want. Or if Aunt Sadie is on her deathbed, we can pray for Aunt Sadie experiencing her highest and best unfolding with love and ease, and not have to define what that is. Maybe that's Aunt Sadie slipping away quietly while nobody's in the room. Maybe it's Aunt Sadie being there and have everyone be present while she makes her transition. Maybe it's Aunt Sadie having a miraculous, spontaneous recovery and living for another 3 years. We don't know. We don't know what's highest and best for Aunt Sadie, and we're not going to claim that. We are simply going to claim that whatever it is that's unfolding is highest and best unfolding with love and ease for everyone involved. And the prayer is simple. We turn our attention away from the stuff that's going on around us. There's certainly lots of details in the world. And open our awareness to that infinite creative power, that divine presence, that one love, that limitless creative force that creates everything, that infinite intelligence that knows all things, that divine creative presence that has created everything that exists everywhere in this manifest universe by sharing itself as its creation. Everything is that one taking form in its own particular way. Everything is that divine presence unfolding in its own way. That includes me. That includes each one within the sound of my voice, and that includes all of the circumstances and experiences for which we would desire prayer. It is all that one power and presence. And it's right here, right now. And knowing that it is all one, that creative power that creates everything is always active, and it's active now, I now place this claim upon that creative law and know without any question that it is unfolding as the highest and best, with love and ease for everyone involved, for each one within the sound of my voice, for each one who is the focus of their intention and their prayer. Highest and best, unfolding in the most graceful and joyous and uplifting way possible, and maybe even a little more so, for everybody involved. I know that it's showing up as health and vitality, as comfort. I know that it's showing up as peace of mind and an experience of harmony and balance and equilibrium. I know that it's showing up as prosperity and an experience of enoughness. It's revealing itself as love and connection of ourselves, those around us, and everybody we're engaged with. I know that it's the opportunity to be creative and share our experience and our talents and our gifts with the world in a way that brings uplift to our lives and to others. These are all the things that are coming together in different ways for each of us, but the same process unfolding for all of us. Highest and best, unfolding with love and ease for each of us and for all of us. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the way that this goodness is coming about. I'm grateful for the stories that we get to tell. And I'm grateful for the awareness of this infinite creative power. And so with a feeling of thanks for all of this good, I speak this word and release it into that same creative law that creates everything. And I know it is now creating an experience of highest and best, unfolding with love and ease for everyone listening. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.